Hello and thank you for joining me. This is 1 in 20 D&D and I am Gregory. Here we go with the VÄRLDEN Reach Session 15 recap. I believe this one will be short and sweet. When the group arrived in Orison, they had a few things that they wanted to handle. First and foremost, my character Jermaine wanted to go and see his kind of military buddies, anyone that might still be in the army of Brennan and stationed here in Orison. So he kind of left after breakfast to go and take care of that. While he did that, the rest of the group went to see about perhaps purchasing some potions or magic items and the like, and went over to Bewitched, a shop that we had gone to in our last trip into Orison. When they got there, they found out that the sisters were kind of upset with the party, and they spiked the prices, made them real high, and at first they didn't really realize it, and then one of them was kind of like, hey, wait a minute, this is Perdita, I believe, realized like these prices for these potions are outrageous, we're not going to pay that. And then they kind of put two and two together. Titus thought, this is suspicious, it's probably because we messed with that guy in that other shop in the Orbis Collector. And then so they went to another. He thought like we were going to be spoiled with every merchant in the city, so they went to see if that was actually the case. Turned out that maybe it wasn't every merchant, just some merchants. So Alina went back in and said, hey, what's going on? And basically come to find out that they were friends with our buddy over at the Orbis Collector, and he since we kind of wrecked his shop and literally scared the piss out of him, they were pretty upset with us and they weren't gonna deal nicely with us. So there you go, that was kind of lame. So we found that out, and it was really funny too. After that, they kind of decided that they would go and check in and try to, well, Titus wanted to see if there was kind of any mercenaries in town that he might be able to, I don't know, get some information from or the like. So they went to a tavern over in the Graveyard District, and one thing we players came to find out in this session is that apparently Lily likes to gamble and doesn't want anyone to know about it. So Titus didn't have much luck with the bartender, although Marana found him to be quite entertaining and amusing and likable, which was kind of funny because, she's not exactly a people person. So he was naive, let's call it, and simple, and she got along with him apparently well. Titus was totally frustrated, thought he was an absolute idiot because he wasn't making money and the like. Turns out his brother, who was running the gambling downstairs, was really the brains of the operation, and the brother running the bar was just a bartender, and probably not a very good one of that. So we got to see another bit of Titus and a little bit of his sort of like, well, here's how Gregory took it. It seems like there's a little bit of desperation with Titus. Like, why is he trying to amass coin? Like, he spent some of it on like upgrading his kit, his gear and stuff. But at the same time, he's very, very like very materialistic is how it seems to Jermaine. And so that's kind of yet to be seen where that might lead or why that might be. The next thing that the group decided to do was go down to the docks, and Alina wanted to see if she could find any contacts down there that she might have. And she had a moment where she basically told Jermaine, like, hey, this is my thing. Let me do the talking here. So, to which he's like, okay, I don't have any contacts in the docks or with any of the sailors or anything, so be my guest. She went, a few of them, let's see, it would have been Alina and Titus and Marana went onto the Raging Rabbit, I think was the name of the ship, and talked to one of the captains. And here's what we're trying to do. We found out that there's an element or a material or metal or something like this called orsonite that supposedly might be on an island, that there was some like rare island mine that maybe this is where this material comes from. And so they were trying to find out, hey, what's this thing? Does anybody know about this island? How to get there? And the like, and how do we get to the other continent and Sakai, and find out, where the slaves are going, basically. How long does it take to get there? That kind of thing. We didn't mention anything about the slaves, but just to get an idea of how far away it is, and by boat and that kind of thing, and how much it might cost, and so on and so forth. So they didn't get a whole lot of information out of that. We did find out like where this island is, and that yes, they have to go buy it on their way to Sakai. So it's something that we could go to, but nobody seems to know anything about this mine. After that, Alina suggested that Jermaine try to talk to the port, oh gosh, what's it called? The ship master, the dock master. That's what I'm trying to say. Try to talk to the dock master and see if we could get any information out of him, to which we did, and it was a kind of an interesting conversation. Just when Jermaine's trying to introduce himself and kind of ingratiate himself with this person, like Alina starts like trying to jump in, and Titus, and it was this mishmash of like, hey, wait a minute. Jermaine is like, I thought you wanted me to do the talking here, so let me do the talking. You guys are like insulting this guy. I can't exactly have this like nice, friendly conversation and try to schmooze this dude if you all are like giving him a hard time and insulting him and whatever. That was kind of funny. So, but what ended up happening, the most interesting thing about that was that while we did that and kind of sort of kept him occupied, then because he turns out to be a little halfling shit. He was just a jerk, and nobody seems to like him, but he's good at what he does, so the city keeps him occupied, keeps him in charge, and he's got these two thugs that he walks around with. So it was just funny and entertaining. While we're doing that, Marana and Lily did this kind of like mini stealth mission. They decided to sneak ahead and get into his office to see if they could find any information on these ships and the comings and goings and just whatever they could find. One thing that happened while they were on the ship, Titus missed it, but Marana saw there was another ship leaving port. And as it was leaving, she saw the people she saw on the deck had those kind of white masks, similar to the white masked individuals Titus had seen with the stagecoach or with the cart or whatever it was the night before or 2 nights before while we were on the road to to Orison. So there's something happening with this little thread that's to be seen. So weren't really getting all that much from Orison. Jermaine was eager to see his family. Basically, everyone aside from Jermaine and Perdita did not want to go see Jermaine's family. Jermaine is like, I want to go see my parents. I haven't seen them in almost a year. It's kind of my thing. I check in with them when I can. I want to let them know what's been happening and so forth. Perdita is thrilled to come and meet his parents. And basically, she kind of talked everyone into like, hey, why don't y'all just go to, you don't have to, hang out with his folks. Just go to Falkirk, and we'll just go to Falkirk and see what happens, And so that's kind of what we did. Now, when we got to Jermaine's family house, he grew up on a farm, and it's this little, nice little homestead outside of Falkirk, on the way from Orison to Falkirk. Falkirk is where the Bard College is, and so his family has this history so his name, Captain Jermaine Santo. The Santos have historically made lutes. They're quite renowned for their fine lutes, and when his father was kind of ready to take over the business, he had no interest in it. He decided he wanted to be a farmer, and luckily his younger brother, Jermaine's uncle, Patrizio, decided he loved making the lutes. That was kind of his passion, so he was happy to take over the business. And what worked out nicely is that Jermaine's father ended up getting married, and they started this farm, and then the farm could help to support the shop because now they had a source of food, and so his uncle could kind of focus on just making the loots and selling loots and bring on an apprentice and so forth. So it worked out really good for the family. Now, a lot of this was not known to anyone in the group. All they knew is, I think Marana was actually the only one that had known until we were on the road from Unity to Orison, because then there was a moment when Jermaine kind of said, "Hey, I can't wait to, for you to get to see my parents." And he made the comment like, "I can't wait to get my hands in the dirt." And then he's like, "Oh, wait a minute. I guess I didn't tell you that, I grew up on a farm. My parents are farmers." So nobody else in the group really knows this about him. All they know is that he mentioned that, he wants to see his parents. That's really all they kind of knew. And he did when Jermaine and Marana had their moment of like first coming to grips with the fact that Jermaine is not, in fact, attracted to Titus, but attracted to Marana. Then in the course of that conversation, one of the things Jermaine revealed to Marana is like, everybody seems to have this opinion of me of like I'm some, I don't know, some aristocrat or some, I don't know, like fly-by-night guy or whatever. They have this opinion of me that's really like way off track. I'm pretty much a down-to-earth guy. I mean, I'm happy. I love life. But the reality is, I grew up on a farm. I like to get my hands dirty. I'm a pretty regular guy. I just happen to be bubbly and happy all the time. So that was kind of fun. That was a few episodes back, right? That was when Jermaine kind of came to the realization, or admitted to himself and Marana at the same time, because she thought he was attracted to Titus. So he's like, "No, I'm attracted to you." And then this conversation happens where he says, "No, I grew up on a farm." She knows about it. On the road down to Orison, Perdita finds out about it. And now the whole group is basically going to end up coming to see this farm. And it was a really interesting thing. So the way it played out in the game, I think I had high hopes for this moment. I thought it'd be really fun, awkward, interesting, whatever. And it played out where it was like, I had no idea this would happen, but pretty much every other player, with the exception, every other character, I should say, with the exception of Perdita, was like totally uncomfortable. They're like, I don't want to be here. This is weird. It's like normal family, and it was like freaking them all out. Which is kind of interesting. Perdita, on the other hand, was thrilled to meet his parents and had a wonderful time. They served his mom is an incredible cook. They have all this fresh, fruits and vegetables and fresh meats and all this. And so they served up this amazing feast, and it was a fun, wonderful evening for Jermaine and Perdita. And then come to find out, after kind of Perdita goes to bed to give Jermaine a little bit of quiet time with his parents, Jermaine had wanted to stay and like hang out and spend a day on the farm, maybe spend some time with his dad in the fields. Actually, he would like to spend a little more time than that, but at least spend one day kind of getting his hands dirty and doing what he can to help his parents. Well, after dinner and after some music and what have you in the evening, his mom kind of revealed, like, well, she didn't reveal anything, but Jermaine could tell something was going on, that she maybe didn't want to bring it up. And when he kind of pried and said, "Hey, Mama, what's going on?" She said, they're worried about Uncle Patrizio. Something is going on and they don't know what it is. Like he hasn't been selling loots. He hasn't been making money. We don't know what's happening. Now, Jermaine is like, "Whoa, okay, that's weird," because as far as Jermaine knows, the last time he came to visit, which was around about a year past in game time, everything was fine. He loves his uncle. He grew up with his uncle and his family. I figure he would go into the city every once in a while and hang out and watch his uncle make loots and hang out. And again, Jermaine became a bard, of course, so he probably spent lots of time in the loot shop, I'm guessing. I'm thinking, imagining. That's my thought of his background. So he has a lot of love for his uncle, and he's like, okay, well, what's going on? And basically says, okay, maybe I should go into town and see what's happening, and set his mom's mind at ease. Basically, mom and dad probably set his parents' minds at ease. So he decides he will go with the group to Falkirk. So the next morning, again, it's another kind of awkward, like, I imagine that it was this kind of meal where Jermaine and Perdita and let's call them Mr. and Mrs. Santo. I have their names, but it's really not important. But anyway, the two parents, I imagine the four of them were having this lively, like, wonderful conversation, and every once in a while would probably try to draw someone else in the group into the conversation, and they were probably just met by, like, either, like, these wide-eyed, freaked out stares, or some one-word answers and grunts and the like. Ku got, of course, treated like a king or a queen, I should say, because, good food, lots of it, and she got a nice comfy bed to sleep on and the whole thing. So it was a lot of fun. Jermaine did have a moment of, like, asking Marana if she would be more comfortable sleeping outside, which of course was another awkward moment between Jermaine and Marana, because it sounded like he was saying, hey, do you want to sleep in the barn, as if and of course, thank you, Mark, for trying, insinuating that Jermaine was suggesting that. It was pretty funny. And long story short, they get to Falkirk, talk to the uncle. Now, when Jermaine sees his uncle, he's happy to see his uncle, of course. He's thrilled. He misses his uncle. He loves his uncle. The others kind of go and do their thing. And Jermaine is in the shop, and it's like, hey, what's going on? And he doesn't really get that much out of Patrizio. He's like, things are just difficult. And kids, people just want the next new thing, and I haven't been inspired, and this kind of thing. And some of the others ask some really good questions about, like, well, why, or what's happening, or what are they looking for, or what instruments are they looking for, and this kind of thing. And it didn't really reveal anything other than he was frustrated and just things weren't going well. So he's like, okay. Then Patrizio noticed Jermaine's mandolin, his magical mandolin, and Jermaine was like, yeah, check this out. He's like excited to show his uncle. It's like, isn't this amazing? And guess what? It's magic. Can you believe that? I mean, we had heard tales about it, but this one actually, for real, is magic. And his uncle was just like amazed and inspired, and he's like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I need. This is the muse this is what I needed, the inspiration, the fire. And so he goes nuts and starts, like, he's like, can I borrow it? Can I look at it? Can I study it? So I can make a new plan. I can make a new loot and this kind of thing. So Jermaine's like, yeah, of course. And he decides he's like going to hang out and help out. And the rest of the group's like, all right, well, we'll let you do your thing and we'll catch up with you later. So Jermaine stays. And of course, Uncle Patrizio lives upstairs above the loot shop, so there's room for Jermaine to stay there, and the others can go get an inn and whatnot. And so as the night goes on, it's like Jermaine is kind of like, wondering what's going on, and he's asking some questions, and he's like, I thought you had an apprentice. Where's the apprentice? And like, no, I had to let the apprentice go. The first thing that was bizarre when they came into the shop is like, Jermaine is used to probably there being plenty of loots and of different sizes and shapes and styles, and they go in and there's like 3 or 4 loots. There's like nothing on the wall, and in the shop it's like, that's kind of weird, and so you can tell his uncle is out of sorts and something's going on, obviously, but his uncle isn't revealing anything. So he's like getting more and more concerned as the night goes on. And his uncle starts acting a little weird again about, at first, Jermaine's like, oh, cool, he's excited about this mandolin, maybe this will help. But then it was like, he just kept getting this like weirder and weirder feeling like something's going on with my uncle. Jermaine decides to stay up with him to like keep an eye on him, like to just try to see like what's really going on. But sure enough, his uncle just spends the night making his sketches, planning out his, let's say, making his plan of attack to create this next new amazing loot. And, he's like, why don't you go to sleep? And, you can help me in the morning. You're going to be no good to me if I'm, if you're not rested. And Jermaine's like, yeah, but, I used to stay up all night with you. I'll be fine. And so he stays up to kind of watch his uncle, but doesn't see anything out of the ordinary. He probably dozes off a few times at night, does his best to stay awake the whole night. And next morning rolls around, and his uncle's like, hey, I told you should sleep, you silly kid. And let me go get us some bagels. And so it's like, okay, sure, that sounds good. So his uncle steps out of the shop, and Jermaine's kind of like, He takes a peek in his workshop, doesn't see the mandolin. So he kind of looks around, doesn't see the mandolin. Now he's like, okay, what's going on with my uncle here? And kind of rushes out the door to chase after his uncle. Bumps into him. His uncle's coming back from the bagel shop, and he sees him, and he's like, oh, what are you doing? Jermaine, I went to get bagels. And so he's like, okay. So he kind of puts his arm around him and says, come on, let's go back to the shop or whatever. Now, that's what happened. That's kind of where we left things. Like, Jermaine goes back to the shop with his uncle. What's going on with Uncle Patrizio? Now, there was above table, there was a really awkward moment at the end where it was like, I think Mark and I were having a little bit of a misunderstanding. Like, I wasn't doing a very good job. I really want to take responsibility for it. I felt like I wasn't doing a very good job conveying what was in Jermaine's mind. Like, Jermaine is, he loves the mandolin, of course. It's fun. It gives him all these abilities and all that. But Jermaine wasn't concerned about something happening to the mandolin. Jermaine is concerned something is going on with his uncle. And what is it, and what's he into? That's what Jermaine is thinking. Because especially with all the stuff that's been going on lately, he's a little on edge, fighting these crazy creatures from other planes of existence and dealing with all this intrigue and just all it's a little beyond like he dealt with some crazy stuff in the army, but that was like crazy stuff that humans do to other humans, or let's say races do to other races, the orcs and the humans and dwarves and elves and whatever, doing to each other. But now it's like getting bizarro. And so he's kind of like, he's on edge, and he came back home to kind of like reconnect. And now he finds out his uncle's having trouble, and he's freaking out a little bit. So apologies to Mark if I was, awkward or whatever. We did talk after the game, which I think is super important for any of you all out there that are running a game. Communicate with your DM, communicate with the other players so you all have an understanding in and out of game of what's going on. And that's part of why I do these recaps. It helps me to wrap my head around what's going on. So what's going to happen? Jermaine's freaking out a little bit. He loves his uncle. He hates to see him in, suffering or in trouble. And his whole life, Jermaine's whole life, the family was happy. Everything's going well. The shop is, growing and doing, good business and all. And now all of a sudden, something's happening with his uncle. And it's happened in the last year. So now it's like, wow, what's going to happen? So I can't wait for this next session. When do I never, it's not like I've ever said, and I don't expect that, like, oh God, next session. That's not going to happen. I can't wait for every session every week. So, wow. All right. That's kind of what happened. I think I covered all the bases there pretty well. It was fun. And again, more character stuff that happened. Interesting thing. I finally got a little bit of a session that kind of focused on Jermaine, which was kind of fun for me as a player, and I appreciate it a whole lot. And next session, we'll see what happens. I guess there's going to be more. We got to find out what is going on with this mandolin and his uncle and this puzzle and trouble in the Santo family. So I can't wait to see what happens and see what our wonderful GM has cooked up for us this time. This is 1 in 20 D&D. I am Gregory. I appreciate you stopping in. I hope you'll tune in for the next one and all the other things that are happening. Got some Car Wars videos coming your way pretty quickly here. Check those out. All the D&D stuff as well. And in the meantime, I hope to see you at a table someday. Keep rolling 20s.